Some connections feel written in the stars, encounters that strike us with such intensity that we dare to call them destiny. But what happens when everything seems to conspire against us? When the signs begin to accumulate like soft whispers from the universe, warning us that something is not right. This video invites you to listen deeply to those subtle and sometimes painful signals that suggest this relationship may not be aligned with your path of individuation and inner growth. We will explore how the universe, with its silent wisdom, reflects the soul and reveals truths we often resist seeing. If you have ever felt that love ought to be lighter, more genuine, and more in tune with who you truly are, keep watching. At the end, leave the phrase, "I choose the love that sets me free," in the comments. This simple affirmation could be the first step toward a new beginning. In Carl Jung's analytical psychology, every relationship is essentially a meeting of two psyches in constant transformation. When we talk about the signs from the universe, indicating that two people are not meant to stay together, we are actually referring to unconscious messages emerging through symbols, synchronicities, and meaningful repetitions, subtle hints that reveal deep truths of the soul. According to Jung, we project onto others aspects of ourselves that we have not yet recognized. At the start of a relationship, this projection can create fascination, as if the other person completes our emotional puzzle. Over time, however, what we projected begins to dissolve, exposing an essential incompatibility. This process invites us to the work of individuation, to return to our own essence and seek who we truly are, free from the illusions and expectations we placed on the other person. The shadow, another core concept of Jung, also appears strongly in dysfunctional relationships. We are often drawn to people who embody what we deny in ourselves, our pain, fears, traumas, and repressed desires. When the relationship becomes a mirror of our own fragmentation, the universe starts sending signals that the cycle must end. These signals are invitations to integrate animus and anima, the inner masculine and feminine aspects, and to find within ourselves the wholeness we so often seek in another. Once we understand this, we stop fighting the natural flow of life and begin to listen to what the soul truly wants. If you pay attention, the universe speaks, and what it wants most is to see you whole. In many relationships, especially those that leave a deep mark, there is a silent and powerful phenomenon at work: projection. For Jung, projecting means attributing to another person unconscious contents of our own, qualities, fears, ideals, traumas, that we have not recognized or integrated. When love becomes projection, we are not really relating to the other as they are, but to an idealized or distorted image we have created inside ourselves. This is one of the first distortions the universe tries to reveal when we are not meant to stay with someone. In the early stages of romance, projection can feel magical. We sense we have finally found the right person, someone who understands us without words, who awakens something in us that had been dormant. It feels as though the other person is the cure for our wounds, the perfect complement to our inner gaps. Yet what seems like a true connection may simply be a reflection of our unconscious desires. We fall in love not with the real person, but with the image we have constructed of them. That is where the danger lies. As time goes on and idealization begins to fade, the first signs of misalignment appear. The other person starts behaving in ways that differ from our projections. Reactions that once felt natural now disturb us deeply. We begin to wonder why that sense of completeness is disappearing. Meanwhile, the universe whispers that this relationship is revealing more about what you need to heal within yourself than about what you truly need to keep by your side. Projection in this context is not a mistake, but an inevitable stage of psychic development. It intensifies what has not yet been integrated within us. When we project, for example, a need to be cared for, accepted, or saved, we unknowingly express an emotional lack that we expect to resolve externally. Our partner then becomes a symbolic savior, someone who represents a part we wish to find in ourselves, but still consider out of reach. Jung invites us to recognize these projections as opportunities for self-knowledge. When we start to see that we are demanding from the other what can only be found within, such as self-esteem, security, or purpose, we take an important step in the individuation process. That is when the universe's signs grow stronger. Constant misunderstandings, sudden disillusionment, a sense of emptiness beside the other, or even a series of negative synchronicities that hinder the relationship's flow. These signs are not punishments, but calls to consciousness. They indicate that we are ready to withdraw the projection and see the other as they are, imperfect, human, autonomous, and at the same time face our own shortcomings without assigning them to anyone else. This movement is painful because it forces us to break with illusion, but it is also deeply liberating as it returns responsibility for our own wholeness to ourselves. True love becomes possible only between two whole beings, not between halves seeking completion. When you realize this, you make room for a more mature and conscious bond. If the person beside you is not willing or prepared to walk the same path of emotional maturity, the universe will keep sending signals. It always works in favor of our growth, even if that means distancing us from those we love. Love ceases to be projection when we learn to love ourselves fully. Only then can we choose partners aligned not with our lacks, but with our essence. Within human relationships, there is an invisible theater playing out in silence, the projection of the shadow. For Jung, the shadow represents everything we repress or deny in ourselves: our impulses, insecurities, traumas, resentments, forbidden desires, and aspects we deem unacceptable. When we enter an intense relationship, it is almost inevitable that these contents surface. The other person becomes a powerful mirror, reflecting not only what we love, but also what we reject or fear within ourselves. When these reflections become unbearable, the universe begins to speak. Repetitive conflicts in a relationship are not just ordinary disagreements. When similar situations recur frequently, despite conversations and attempts at resolution, it can strongly indicate that the relationship is driven by unprocessed, unconscious contents. These patterns insist on manifesting until they are recognized and integrated. It might be constant jealousy, fear of abandonment, need for control, or difficulty trusting, signals from the shadow crying out for awareness. Imagine someone who always gets involved with partners who make them feel invisible or unappreciated. Rather than mere bad luck, this repetition may reveal a deep wound of personal devaluation, perhaps dating back to childhood. Instead of seeking in the other the validation we never had, Jung invites us to dive within and ask, what is this pattern trying to teach me about myself? The relationship becomes a laboratory of the soul, and the signs are small alchemical experiences meant for transformation. At such moments, the universe shows itself as a silent sage, creating experiences that force us to look where we most avoid. That is why relationships not meant to last, yet emotionally impactful, almost always awaken our shadow. The intensity of the bond, combined with constant pain, is like an unconscious cry for integration. Signs of the shadow in a relationship often manifest as ongoing emotional discomfort, a feeling of walking on eggshells, fights that always end in the same place, or even symbolic episodes such as disturbing dreams, repeated accidents, or parallel losses during the relationship. These are unconscious expressions trying to break through the surface so we can finally see them. Denying the shadow means remaining trapped in cycles. Integrating it means recognizing that what we condemn in the other might be exactly what is unresolved within ourselves. If a relationship awakens intense and continuous anger, jealousy, dependency, resentment, or fear, it does not mean the other person is to blame for our pain. It means they are activating vulnerabilities already present within us, waiting to be acknowledged. The challenge is to notice when a relationship stops being a space for mutual growth and becomes a stage for shadow projections. When two partners react from their shadows, communication becomes defensive, love turns into conflict, and the bond wears away as if an invisible force pushes them towards separation. Indeed, such a force exists. It is the call to individuation, the internal healing that can only happen in the silence of one's own soul. Ending such a relationship is not failure, but courage. Courage to look within and admit that the other person's mission in our life may have been simply to ignite that uncomfortable light of consciousness. By letting them go, we create space for a truer love, one that does not deny the shadow but integrates it, becoming freer, deeper, and more real. The universe sends these signals not to punish, but to awaken us. By recognizing them, we begin the journey back home, to ourselves. There are times in life when everything seems to conspire in favor of a relationship, but there are also phases when, no matter how hard we try, obstacles pile up as if an invisible force were choreographing our missteps. For Jung, these meaningful coincidences are not mere chance, but manifestations of the collective unconscious called synchronicities. When two people are not destined to stay together, the universe uses this symbolic language, to warn that something is out of soul alignment, and that perhaps it is time to let go. Synchronicities are events without a direct causal link, yet connected by deep meaning. In a relationship, they can appear subtly yet powerfully. You think of distancing yourself, and that same day you see a phrase saying, "let go," or when you attempt reconciliation, a misunderstanding, an accident, or a loss interrupts that effort. These symbolic interferences remind us that the soul knows where it needs to go, even when the rational mind resists. These signals do not always show up overtly. Sometimes they appear as internal sensations, inexplicable unease upon meeting the person, constant anguish, even in moments that should be joyful, a weight accompanying every attempt to keep the relationship alive. Other times, the universe acts through external repetitions, patterns repeating in different contexts, the same mistakes, the same pains, the same impasses. Nothing changes, no matter how much effort is made. Jung believed the unconscious constantly seeks balance and wholeness. When we are in a relationship that leads us away from our essential truth, the unconscious begins to manifest in every possible way, as if screaming for freedom. Often this scream takes the form of unexpected ruptures, irreparable arguments, painful discoveries, forced separations by life circumstances. At first glance, these may seem like tragedies, but through a Jungian lens, they are opportunities for awakening. In this context, a breakup need not be seen as defeat, but as a portal. When the universe separates two people, even in the face of genuine love, it is because that bond in that form has fulfilled its purpose. Insisting on staying can then become self-abandonment. The universe, committed to our individuation, the ongoing process of integrating who we are, will not allow us to remain stuck where the soul cannot flourish. It is essential to pay attention to the signs. A healthy relationship, though challenging, propels us toward growth. But when everything around begins to crumble, when life energy seems drained, when plans always fail and frustration becomes constant, there may be a greater force at work. In such moments, the call is not to fight harder, but to listen more. Synchronicity invites us to observe the world around us with renewed attention. Some ignore these signals out of fear of loneliness, attachment to fantasy, or learned patterns that equate love with suffering. But the soul does not lie. It knows when it is being neglected, and the universe becomes its ally, even if that means provoking painful ruptures. A misaligned relationship can teach us much about boundaries, self-love, and discernment, but it should not be the place where we lose ourselves. Learning to read life's symbols is a spiritual practice. When we accept that not all connections are meant to last, we make room for a more conscious, integrated, and authentic love, and above all, for a life aligned with our true essence. In the end, the universe does not separate us from anyone, but brings us closer to our own truth. Few acts require as much courage as choosing yourself at the end of a relationship. On the path of individuation, we are constantly challenged to abandon patterns, masks, and bonds that take us away from our essence. Often this means accepting that the person we once loved deeply is no longer in resonance with our inner process. Letting go is not the end of love, but the maturity to understand that not every love is meant to last. To individuate is to become fully who you are. It means integrating all parts of the psyche, light and shadow, masculine and feminine, instinct and reason, and allowing life to manifest through our most authentic truth. This process requires ruptures. It demands the courage to look in the mirror and recognize where we are still living according to others' expectations, neediness, or illusions of completeness. When we insist on maintaining relationships that no longer resonate with our soul, we betray our own path. The universe, ever an ally of authenticity, begins to push us, even if through pain. Detaching does not mean forgetting or denying what was lived. It is possible to honor the story, be grateful for what was learned, and still acknowledge that moving forward is the healthiest step. Individuation is solitary, but not in the sense of isolation. Instead, it is a return to the center. Choosing yourself does not reject the other, but closes a cycle of projections, dependencies, and patterns that no longer serve. We often feel guilty for leaving someone, especially when affection remains and the bond has not been completely broken by pain. Yet this guilt reflects a conditioning that taught us love means enduring everything. Jung shows us the opposite. True love allows the other to be free and also liberates us when the bond prevents the soul from flourishing. Love should expand, not imprison. If it has become a burden, something is out of balance, and restoring balance always begins within. Choosing yourself is a revolutionary act. It means recognizing that your life has value regardless of being with someone. It means accepting that your journey cannot be interrupted by fear of loss. It also means trusting that by aligning with your own truth, the universe will bring new experiences and healthier, more aligned, and more whole relationships. But the new arrives only when there is space, and space emerges only through detachment. There is an archetypal force in letting go. It is the hero's journey that sheds everything hindering growth. In the silence following departure, the possibility of reconnection with the self arises. It is in this inner reunion that true freedom is born, living not for what the other represents, but in harmony with who you are. The universe does conspire, but not to preserve what is illusory. It conspires for you to become true. In this process, you may need to release hands that once sheltered you, words that once promised, and gazes that once felt like home. The real home was never outside. It has always been within you. When a relationship stops reflecting the soul and becomes a weight upon it, the call is clear. It is time to go. Not for lack of love, but out of respect for yourself. The universe speaks, and when you answer with courage, it responds with freedom. Some encounters come to transform us, not to last forever. When two souls cross paths, something greater moves, and sometimes that movement is an awakening. As we have seen throughout this video, the universe sends signals when a relationship ceases to be a refuge and becomes a limit. These signals are not punishments, but invitations to awareness, self-knowledge, and above all, the courage to choose yourself. Jungian psychology teaches us that to love is not to lose ourselves in another, but to find ourselves through the encounter. When that does not happen, the soul suffers and the universe intervenes. It moves us away from what moves us away from ourselves. If you are experiencing one of these cycles, remember this: your journey matters, your truth matters, and the love that begins within is the only love that can truly overflow. Subscribe to the channel for more content like this, focused on inner awakening and deep psychology. If this video touched your heart, watch the one appearing on your screen now. It is the natural continuation of your process. You deserve a love that brings you closer to who you are. The universe is already speaking. The question is, are you listening?